What's up, everybody? Welcome to Three Wide in the Middle, your home for all things racing. Although been a while since we've been here. Uh, we'll get into all of that and more. Now, my man Keith he's not with me today. That's been one of the biggest hiccups that we've had over the last, basically since the last pod at the end of 2022, is both of us being able to get together to do the pod. So we'll cover that in my tales from the front line, which is what's going on in the home life. But we got a bunch of stuff to cover. Racing season is back underway, at least on the dirt side. NASCAR did have their clash at the Coliseum, and we've got everything's on the horizon. Daytona, F1's going to be here in a couple weeks, so a bunch of stuff to get to in the podcast. But before we do that, let's fill you in on what's been going on. So if you guys remember, we talked into 2022 right before the holidays, and in the last show we were going to be back. We were going to be doing our big Chili Bowl breakdown. The whole episode was going to be dedicated to the Chili Bowl, and me and Keith both got COVID. We live a couple thousand miles apart from each other, and we both got COVID. Now, his actually lingered quite a while. Mine, I got my butt kicked for like 5 days, and I don't get sick like that. One of the things that I will deal with more than illness is, I don't want to say injury, because it's not like I'm getting injured, but it's kind of lingering stuff. So I've got, a number of herniated discs in my neck and my low back, with nerve damage. I've had it for years. I mean, going on, 2 decades now. Like, I've had it a very, very long time. It's one of those things that I've never been able to take care of. They told me years ago, like, hey, you need surgery. And my response was, well, can you guarantee me that it's going to fix the problem? And their answer was, no, we can't guarantee that. It's like, well, then you're not going to do it. I've had 6 knee operations because the first knee surgery that the doctor did was the wrong surgery. He misdiagnosed it and did the wrong surgery. So I'm a little iffy about operations. And so the neck thing, the back thing, it's one of those things that will bother me, and I'll have days where my neck will be killing me and it'll give me a horrible headache. It feels like somebody's stabbing knives into the base of my brain, up my neck and into the base of my brain. I'll have these horrible pains that will shoot from my neck down into my arms, and my hands will go numb. But those things, as bad as they can be, are temporary, right? And usually I can push through it. Now, I do have days where it's just like I have to go lay down and put an ice pack on my neck, but I could count on one hand how many days I have of those a year, maybe 2 hands, right? It's not a lot. For me to be put down in 5 straight days in bed with COVID, that doesn't happen. It just doesn't. The headache that I got with this was insane. I've had viral meningitis before. That's the worst headache I've ever had in my entire life. I thought my brain was going to explode. Part of it is because I think your brain actually does swell. Like it was really bad. It hurt bad. And the headaches that I get from my neck can get really bad as well. But this was so bad I couldn't move. When I woke up that first morning, I had gone to bed and I wasn't feeling that well. I had actually done a live stream on my YouTube channel, and I had mentioned it. Hey, I'm not feeling very good. It's, today I thought I was coming down with like a cold or something. And I woke up at like 3 o'clock in the morning and my head hurt so bad. It was pounding. And I got up to go to the bathroom and I could not walk. Every step that I took, it felt like someone was hitting me in the head. It was horrible. And so I actually had a doctor's appointment scheduled already that morning, because I see a DO for my replacement therapy. You guys have heard me talk before about, being a recovering drug addict, addiction. And so I see a doctor every couple months for this. And I had that appointment that morning at, it was first thing in the morning, like 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning. So I went back to bed, got up at 7 something, went straight to the doctor, had on multiple masks 'cause I thought I had the flu. I thought maybe this was the flu. My whole body ached. I knew I had a fever. I just didn't know how bad it was. Like I said, my head was killing me, absolutely killing me, to the point to where I probably shouldn't have been driving. That's how bad my head hurt. I felt, dizzy, and it was bad. It was really bad. And I get there and I tell them, hey, I'm sick. That just to let you know, they test me for both the flu and COVID, and they come back in, my doctor and another doctor, the specialist there who deals with COVID patients, and they were like, you've got a bad case of COVID. They put me on this medicine that they usually give, like, you know, seniors. So like if you're like 60 years old and you get COVID, because if you're older and if you're immunocompromised, it can actually be deadly in situations. They put me on this medicine. They were like, you've got a really bad case. You need to take this, go home now. And so I was in bed for like 5 days and it was horrible. Well, at the same exact time, Keith had COVID and I had messaged him saying, hey man, no pod this week. I've got COVID. And I spent New Year's in bed with COVID. My wife also was sick with COVID at the same time. So me and her were both homesick New Year's, asleep by like 9 o'clock on New Year's Eve while my kids, our kids were out at their cousin celebrating. So that was New Year's. It was not not the best way to kick off 2023. Well, also at that time, okay, we got a we I should when I need to explain. We is me and my brother. So my brother and I got a incredible opportunity for a new business. Okay. Now, to tell you this, I got to give you some backstory. So years and years and years ago, probably 12, 13 years ago now, my family opened up a auto body shop. My brother has done auto body work he started doing it when he was like 13 years old, right? So by the time he was out of high school, he was very, very good at it. Very good. He was one of the few guys out there who could do both the auto body side and the paint side. Usually you do one or the other. And if you do both, you're usually like in your 30s or 40s, right? Very rarely do you have like a 22-year-old who does both and does both very, very well. Well, that was my brother. And so we had opened this auto body shop and he was going to be, the one doing the work. And it was going to obviously be a smaller shop and the family was going to run it and all this stuff like this. Well, when we did that, pretty much everything that could go wrong did go wrong. And I don't mean that from a business standpoint. I mean that from our personal life standpoint, for reasons, stuff that I don't really want to get into, but it involved my brother with his two little girls at the time. Both of them they were young. I think his oldest Blaze was 3 and his youngest Bree was 1. I mean, they were basically babies. And his ex, who is now his ex. And so it was the worst possible timing to have all this stuff happen. It all happened. We had the shop for a couple of years and we ended up selling it and being done with it. Well, during that time, we had this guy who started coming by to do the glass work for us at the shop. A guy by the name of Dave and his wife, Kate. And they met my brother and stuff like that, and they knew him and everything. So when we closed down the body shop, my brother actually ended up going and learning glass, how to do glass, auto glass with them. Well, my brother did it for quite a while and got really good at it. And he started basically kind of running the business for them. They weren't out in the field working every day. My brother was, and he got really good at it. Well, when they came back to work and started doing it every day, they ended up, not keeping my brother around, but they had told my brother, my brother Mikey, they said, hey, look, when the day comes that we retire, we want to give you this glass business. And my brother was like, okay, sweet. And, this was years ago. Oh my God, 7, 8 years ago. So we hadn't heard much about it. They'd mention it every now and then when they'd see my brother or something like that. Well, this last year in September of 2022, they call my brother and tell him, hey, they're like, hey, Mikey, we're going to be retiring, moving away in 2023. Do you want to take over the glass business? And my brother's got a really good job right now with the city, like a really good job. He runs their waste management, the waste management side, wastewater side for them. And he's got a really good job. And he was trying to figure out, okay, well, how can I do this? How can I do my job and do the glass business? Because the glass business, the customers are auto body shops. It's not like you're just going to people's houses and replacing windshields. We service the auto body shops. And if you know anything about the auto body business, everything is now. It's got to be done now. It's got to be done now. Hey, I need this car to get out. We got to get this glass in it today because we got to get the car out, and then we'll replace the glass, and a week later the car's still sitting there. It's like, what? I thought this thing had to go out. What happened? But that's how it is. It's hurry up, wait. So my brother tells me, we go up to our cabin, a few weeks later, and when we're driving up there, he mentions it to me. He's like, hey, Dave and Kate are going to be moving away. They want to give me this glass business. Do you want to do it with me? And I've got my online business, which is very, very successful, right? I mean, it's what pays my bills. I'm not rich. I'm not breaking in, 6 figures a year, but we get by with me having just my online business, right? And so I'm like, well, yeah, I'll do that with you. I'm like, but I don't really know glass, bro. I'm like, we used to replace door glasses. I've never done windshields or back glasses or anything like that. So he's like, don't worry. I'll get with Dave. You can ride with Dave for, a few months, learn how to do this stuff. And then he's like, and what we'll do is you can go through the shops, go by the shops the first half of the day, figure out everything that needs to get done. If anything has to be done right now, you'll take care of it. And then just let him know, hey, my brother will be by the second half of the day. And he's like, and I'll do the harder stuff because I know how to do it. It's like, all right, sweet, no problem. So this was in like October. We get a call, and I don't know, November, end of November. And it's like, hey, we're going to be leaving, in this like May, right? May or April or something like that. And so we're like, all right, we'll get together here. Holidays are coming up. We'll get together after the holidays, get this stuff going, start getting all the tools that we need. Cause there's a lot to it, right? It's not like it's just, you don't just need a pair of pliers, right? There's a lot to the glass business. And so, we get past Thanksgiving, we get another call. Hey, we put a bid in on a house. It was accepted. We're out of here January. And me and my brother are like, okay. And I'm telling my brother, I'm like, bro, I know nothing about this business. Nothing. I don't know how to cut out quarter glasses. I don't know how to do windshield. I don't know anything about it. Now, yes, I am very mechanically inclined. I've worked on cars literally from the time I was, 9, 10 years old, right? I know I can figure it out, but I don't know anything. I don't know it. I got to learn it. And so I started riding with Dave in the middle of December. And of course, right, I've only got a couple of weeks to learn. And of course, while I'm riding with him, business is slow and I get COVID. Then when I come back, if you guys remember hearing about it out here in California, we had that bomb cyclone that blew through the state for like 3 straight weeks. Well, apparently when water hits people's windshields here in California, apparently they just start slamming into each other. I don't know what it is about the drivers in this state, whether they're in the north or the south, northern or southern California. When water hits the windshields or when the wipers come on, all of a sudden their driving skills go completely out the window, no pun intended, and they just start slamming into each other. It's the most ridiculous thing you've ever seen. It's absolutely bonkers. I've never seen anything like it before. It's just, it's like, are you trying to dodge the rain? What are you doing? Why are you swerving everywhere? Why are you just running into people? It's the most absurd thing you will ever see. And of course, we service body shops. So what does this do? This blows business through the roof. We take this thing over, right? We officially start our business January 9th. And our first week, we are so slammed. I'm doing 16, 18-hour days. Now, that's the glass business with my online business. And I'm working 6, 7 days a week. And so when it comes to doing the podcast, we don't really have a time to do the podcast, right? I don't have a time to, I'm just like, man, Keith, I don't know when I can do it because when I'm working, right, or when Keith is off, I'm working. And when I'm off, I'm sleeping, right? Like that's basically the way that it is right now. And it's been like that since the start of the year. And we were supposed to get together today for the podcast. Um, and, my man couldn't make it, you know what I mean? And it's just, I know that he works late at night and he's Eastern time, I'm Western time. And so unfortunately he's not here right now. It's just me. And we'll hopefully get this thing figured out and dialed in, going on through the rest of the season here because yeah, it's been a real bummer. It's a good problem to have. Don't get me wrong. The glass business has been phenomenal. We've been doing great. In the first, I think in the first 3 weeks of the business, we did, I think more than 10 grand in business, right? Which is, that's amazing, right? When you start looking at that over the course of a year, doing some math and projecting, and it's like, man, this is going to be really, really good. And considering that it's just me and my brother doing it, right? Like that's really, really good. So don't get me wrong, it's a very good problem to have. It just sucks that there are things like the podcast, which is kind of taken a hit. And it's unfortunate because I love doing this. Now I'm still going to be doing it. Keith we will get this figured out. I just don't know exactly when. The pod is going out right now. I'm recording this on the 9th, which is my wife's birthday today. Happy birthday, babe. And we'll figure out the day and when we can do it so we can get this out. So I don't know next week. I don't know if we'll be doing it on Thursday or for Friday, or I don't know what. I don't know when we'll be doing it, what will be the final day, but I will keep you guys posted. So I just wanted to fill you in on what's been going on the last, few weeks, couple months, because like I said, it's been crazy. It's been insane. And I've had a bunch of you guys hit me up during my live streams asking, hey man, what happened to the podcast? Did you quit doing it? Well, we haven't quit. We're still here. So we'll be around. But anyways, you guys, we're going to take a quick break. When we get back from the break, we got a bunch of stuff to talk about. We're going to cover the Clash. We've got some dirt stuff to talk about as Brad Sweet picks up right where he left off, along with Carson Macedo down in Volusia as they ran with the All-Stars the last 2 nights and getting ready to start the Dirt Car Nationals with the Outlaws. So got to talk about that, plus some F1 stuff if we have time to get to it. That can probably wait since they don't start for a few more weeks, so we'll see. But we'll be right back after this quick break. All right, so we had the Clash this past weekend, and it was what can I say? First of all, there was a ton of cautions in the race. I think it was 15 cautions. It seemed like there was 50 of them, but I think there was 15 or 16, maybe 17. There was a lot of cautions. And when it was all said and done, Martin Truex Jr. got the win, which was actually pretty cool to see. Now, if you remember last season, Truex did not have a win. He was one of the drivers, these guys who basically came up in the old Gen 5, Gen 6 era. These guys, they they really did not like this car. I mean, even some of the guys who are younger, right? The Chase Elliott's, the Kyle Larsons, right? Those guys, Ryan Blaney's, they were having problems with the car as well. But if you looked at, there was a handful of guys, Harvick, Truex Jr., right? Some of these older guys, Hamlin, that just, even if they had some wins, some success, they just were not a big fan of this car. A lot of the drivers weren't, but Truex was one that just, he seemed to really hate it. So to see him get a win was good. I do think we're going to see these guys rise back to the top. I do think we're going to see that. These guys that we know are good, right? There's no doubting that Martin Truex Jr. is a good driver, right? He might not have had a good year last year, but he's a good driver, right? The guy's a champion. He has won the Cup championship. He has won a bunch of races. He is an extremely good driver. For him to not have a win last year, it happens. But to think that he's going to just suck this year is, I don't see that happening. I think a lot of these teams, especially when you look at whether it's Joe Gibbs Racing, 2311, even, RCR, Hendrick, right, these teams, now that they've had a full year to get into these cars, they've had an off season now to really dive in, right? The engineers can really get into it, look at the data, look at all this stuff. I think we're going to see these guys kind of get back to the top. I think these teams are going to get these cars figured out, what they like, what they want. We saw it last year with Harvick, where Rodney Childers finally said, look, man, I had to stop looking at this thing like it was the Gen 6 car. I had to stop trying to set it up like the Gen 6 car, because it's not the Gen 6 car. It's completely different. We had to look at this from a completely different, point of view. And when they did, Harvick came out and won 2 races in a row, right? And was very fast the rest of the year. So I think we're going to see that with a lot of these other drivers who might have stumbled last season. I think they're going to get turned around, and Truex Jr. is one of them that I believe is going to have a really good year. Now, Keith and I were going to be doing our what we were going to be calling our ridiculously too early playoff predictions, but we'll be waiting till the next pod to do that, because I want to do that with him. I don't want to do mine without him. So we'll be doing that in the next episode. But if you look at the top 10 from the Clash, and the Clash tells us what, right? What does the Clash tell us? Not much, okay? To call it, I wouldn't even classify it as a short track. Martinsville's a short track, right? Bristol's a short track. The Coliseum it's Bowman gray. I mean, that's what it is. You know what I mean? It's a flat quarter-mile track that can barely fit 2 cars side by side on it. I've always been of the opinion, and I know that I'll, if I'm ever in the Bowman gray area, that I will be, burned at the stake for saying this, but I've always thought that track was extremely overrated. It's not good racing. It's a bunch of, jackasses slamming into each other and fighting. Like, that's all it is. I love short track racing. I like beating and banging, but I also like racing, right? I don't want to just see people. I don't want to see it to where you have to run into somebody to get around them. Now, the Clash is unique because NASCAR doesn't, this is the only time they run at a track like this. So it makes it its own unique thing, which is cool. All right. It's cool. And they've got the heat races and all the consolations and stuff like that. So it makes it unique. But in terms of what it tells us or shows us, right, there's not much there. Aerodynamics is not a factor, right? I mean, it shows us, hey, your brakes work good, right? Second gear works good. Like, these guys aren't even in high gear. So, it's good to see that, hey, Truex got a win. Austin Dillon finished second. Kurt Busch finished third. So the RCR teammates up there on the podium. And then you had Alex Bowman in fourth, Larson fifth, Reddick, Preece, Chastain, Hamlin, and Byron. Kind of the usual suspects, with the exception of Ryan Preece, who finished seventh, which was actually pretty cool to see, being that, he's new to the Stewart-Haas team. In terms of everybody else, though, right? I mean, if I had told you, hey, Kyle Larson's going to finish in the top 5, is that a surprise? Most people would say, no, that's not. Now, Bubba Wallace had a really good run. You know, unfortunately, Bubba Wallace and Austin Dillon, Dillon got together with them. That caused Bubba to drop back. I think he finished 22nd. So, tough break for him. But I that is really what to expect here. I mean, I don't know what else you would expect at this track. You got to expect beating and banging. You can't go into that thinking, man, no one better touch me or there's going to be a problem. I mean, honestly, if you're not getting bumped, then you're not competing. I mean, that's just how this racing is. So overall, the Coliseum delivered what it was supposed to deliver, which is close quarters racing, put on a spectacle, put on a show, and that's what it is, and that's what it was. So, congrats to Truex Jr. And even Austin Dillon and Kyle Busch to be up there on the podium. I do think the people who are saying that, hey, this Austin Dillon finishing second, this is the Kyle Busch investment already paying off. I think that's one of the dumbest, most premature things that you can say. Let's take a look at it after 4 or 5 races, shall we? Can we not just look at this? I that would be like me saying Martin Truex Jr. won the Clash this year, so he'll win the championship because Joey Logano won it last year and won the championship, right? It's kind of a premature thing to predict. So, let's give it a few races before we start anointing RCR as the new powerhouse because of Kyle Busch, and let's give it some time and see what happens before we do that. All right, before we bless them, but. Anyways, moving on, we have had some dirt racing. Now, the Dirt Car Nationals actually kick off tonight. They are down in Volusia. You've got I believe both of the series are down there, if I'm remembering correctly. So you should have, yes. So you've got the late models and the sprint cars. World of Outlaws at Volusia tonight, Friday night, and Saturday night. Now my goodness, why am I so tongue tied here? They will go to, or I'm not go to. They will stay at Volusia through the 18th. So if you remember, it's basically you've got 2 weekends of racing here. So you've got the sprint cars on the 9th, 10th, and 11th, and then you've got the late models on the 16th, 17th, and 18th. They break it into 2 weekends is what they do. So this weekend we've got the sprint cars. Now we had the All-Stars the last 2 nights, and it was the usual suspects up front. I mean, we basically picked up where we left off last year. Night number 1 at Volusia, it was Brad Sweet with the win, followed by Logan Schuchart and David Gravel rounding out the podium. Last night it was Carson Macedo getting the win over Donnie Schatz and James McFadden. So, the Outlaws picking up where they left off. Obviously, we still have a lot of stuff to look at in terms of the agreement with the Outlaws, the points fund, what races they can run, what can't they run. Everyone's still talking about the Eldora Million and what's going to happen with that. I mean, it's just, let's wait and see. Right. I think there's teams that might go in. Look, we're going to try to run with the Outlaws, but if something happens and we can start doing, we can run these races over here and make more money, I think that's going to be there. Right. I really do. The high limit stuff doesn't get kicked off here for a few more weeks. Obviously, it's the dirt racing, even though it's starting now, it's very limited because it's down in Florida, right? Dirt Car Nationals are down in Florida. Every year this happens where, we get going, and then we've got essentially a month break, right? Dirt Car Nationals, Florida, and then, the sprint cars go back down there. the first week of March. So it's not a, you know, it's not like it's starting now and we're off to the races. Like we've got this first event and then we got, a few weeks off and then we get back to racing. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. I do believe, the top guys are going to be running the whole season. Brad Sweet is going to be looking for his 5th championship. I mean, I don't see him just being like, yeah, screw it. I do think he's going to be looking for a 5th championship. I do think you'll see David Gravel looking to get his first Outlaw championship. It's going to be an interesting year, but in terms of who's going to be running what and where and the actual commitments to it, I don't think we're going to be knowing all of that, until the racing gets more underway. Just because, like I said, I do think you might have drivers who are starting off the year committed to running the Outlaws, and if things don't go well, they might say, hey, look, we can go run this over here and potentially make more money, and we've had parts failures or bad luck and we're 7th in the points, and let's screw it, let's go run something else. I do think that is a possibility. So it's going to be an interesting year with all of this stuff and everything that's been happening with the payouts and purses and stuff like that. Jack Hewitt at the Chili Bowl talking about, those guys not being there and the Chili Bowl still going. I was, I love Jack. So, he does have a point there. I am one of the types of people who does believe that the Chili Bowl should be paying out more than $10,000. But I also agree with Jack Hewitt in the sense that, hey, look, man, this is a big event and it's going to happen with or without those guys, and it's still going to be packed and it's still going to be, the biggest midget race of the year. So a lot of good points and comments on both sides of the spectrum. So we'll wait to see how it plays out. But yeah, we've got Volusia kicking off tonight for the sprint cars. Once again, Keith and I were going to be making our predictions on the season, but without him here, I don't want to do that. I would like to actually do it just because sprint cars are getting started tonight, but personally, I think Brad Sweet's going to win the championship again this year. I thought last year he was finally going to get pressured. We talked about how Sheldon Haudenschild, he had gone on this run. If he could put it together, he had a chance at challenging Sweet, and he fell off. He dropped, he finished 5th last season. He ended up dropping behind, shots. Carson Macedo had 11 wins last season and finished 3rd in the points. It's all about consistency with the Outlaws. It really is. The wins are great and they look awesome, but you've got to be there week in and week out. And right now, there's nobody better at that than Brad Sweet. There's just not. The Brad Sweet and that team are just dialed. They're just dialed in. There's no other way to put it. And so to me, it was like picking against, Tom Brady and the Patriots for 2 decades, right? You just didn't do it. It was like, until they get beat by somebody, I'm not picking against them. It's the same thing with this. Until Sweet and the Napa 49 team get beat in the championship, I ain't picking against them. That's my pick. He's going to win it again. And, if he doesn't, then we'll see what happens. But to me, it's going to be him. I think we're looking at another Donnie Schatz, Steve Kinzer type run. I really do. That's how special I think that team is, and how special Brad Sweet is, which is pretty incredible. He's already had a historic career, and he's still got a long ways to go. So we'll see if he can get his 5th championship this season. All right, so to close out today's show, we got to talk about Kevin Harvick, who announced that this is his last year. Once again, I don't want to get into that without Keith, just because that's his man. Harvick is his man. So we'll wait till the next episode to do that with Keith. But there was some other stuff that did come down. NASCAR had some rule changes, if you remember. They also had a test that they did at Phoenix. Obviously, one of the things that we were going into the off season was the uh, short track package and what it is that we were hoping to see in terms of improvements or fixes, right? We talked about the shifting and we talked about, all these different aspects. They were testing a 2.5-inch spoiler, which is something that I would personally love to see. To me, if you can't increase the horsepower, get rid of the aero, right, on the short tracks. Because even on a track like Martinsville, for example, that spoiler does play a role. It does have an effect. Those guys are going fast enough to where that does add some downforce. Get rid of it, right? You want to keep it at the mile and a half, that type of stuff, fine. Anything less than that, get rid of it. I'm fine with that. I'm absolutely fine with that. I think that would be great. So, will we see that? I don't know. Nothing official has really been announced yet in terms of those types of changes. But there was a new rule that has come out. Many of you have probably already seen this, and that is the penalty for the what's being called the hail Melon. Ross Chastain's what I consider to be the greatest pass in NASCAR history. And that's coming from somebody who is, grew up rooting for Dale Earnhardt. And, you talk about the pass in the grass, right? And all these great, incredible moves. To me, what Chastain did at Martinsville last year was unprecedented. And it was the greatest pass to me that I've ever seen in any race. It was that good. And it will be the only time we ever see it now, because NASCAR has basically said you can no longer do this. It is a penalty now. I will give NASCAR credit. When it happened, that was something me and Keith talked about after that race, where we talked about, whether or not NASCAR was going to come out with the penalty for that. They decided to officiate the remainder of the season the way they had the previous, 20 some odd races, which I give them a lot of credit for. I do understand where NASCAR is coming from. Okay, I do. I get it. When we talk about safety and we talk about the potential for what could have happened, you look at that move that Chastain did, and it was incredible and it worked out. But all you have to have is a slight gap or, a weak point in the safer barrier, okay? And now all of a sudden, instead of him bouncing off that wall and going all the way around it, now that car digs in slightly and hooks, and now you've got this massive wreck or potential debris flying off. Or there's all these different potential what ifs. Are the chances of it slim? Yes, right? Do I like the fact that NASCAR has done this? Not really, right? It feels like, we look at the NFL, everyone, we call it the no fun league. It's like, all right, they're just killing the fun. But I also understand it from a safety point of view. And if somebody were to do that again, attempt it again, and it did end badly, now you've got potential for liability. You've got the potential, the possibility of NASCAR now being responsible for an injury or, God forbid, a death, right? Or, critical injury to a fan or another driver, right? Where somebody could come out and say, hey, look, man, you saw somebody do this last year. You knew the potential possibilities of what could go wrong and you still did nothing. And now you've got somebody in a hospital bed, right? Or you've got somebody who's hurt, or you've got all this damage that's been done to these cars because someone else tried to pull a Chastain. So I understand NASCAR doing it. I do. Doesn't mean I like it. I definitely don't love it, but it's one of those things where Ross Chastain in one season did more to alter a sport, right? If you think about drivers that have come in and made a splash, where we look back on their year or their start, right? We will remember 2022 as the year of Ross Chastain. He did not win the championship. He was in the Final Four, but he did not win the championship. But we will look back on 2022 as the year of Ross Chastain, meaning that there was no driver that we talked about more. There was no driver who had a bigger impact on whether it be the rules or the storylines or whatever, right? I mean, we had the Ross Chastain don't give a tour, right? Like, I mean, that's what we called it because the man literally just did not care. And he wasn't devious. He wasn't like, vicious about it. He's the type of person who, and you've heard this from people who worked with him or who spotted for him, who would literally tell stories about, hey man, why did you run into that guy on lap 15? And he will literally be like, what are you talking about? Like, he's so focused in what he's doing in the car. Like, he legitimately doesn't know. He just does not remember. He's got one purpose and one purpose only. It's to go out there and win races. And he is just an incredible person for the sport. He is somebody that I think the sport really has needed. And it's good to see. And I hope he can follow up 2023 with the year like he had in 2022. Obviously, we're not going to see the Hail Melon anymore, but hopefully we can see Ross Chastain up front again, because it was incredible to have him last year be one of the storylines, be something to talk about each and every week, and to see somebody who is literally, a freaking watermelon farmer, and he goes out there and races, and it's just, overall, it was incredible. To have this rule come out, it was almost like the perfect exclamation point to his 2022 season. Like, it almost had to be a rule. It almost had to end that way, right? Like, the season wasn't officially over until we had a ruling on the Hail Melon, because now they've come out. There's a rule against it. You can no longer do it. And it's like, he will forever be immortalized as the man who got this outlawed, because that's what he did. And like I said, we will look back on 2022 as the Chastain year. Just like, drivers or fans look back on, 79 and 80, right? As, the breakthrough of Dale Earnhardt, right? Or the Daytona 500, where you've got Allison Yarbrough, right? It's all of this stuff, like, it just goes down in history. And last season is going to be the year of Chastain. And hopefully, I'm hoping so much to see him running up front each and every week once again, because it was a lot of fun. And I personally love the guy, man. I think he's great for the sport, and I cannot wait to see what he does in 2023. All right, everybody. So that's going to do it for this week's episode of 3 Wide in the Middle. Like I said, I just wanted to hop on, even though me and Keith could not get together. I wanted to hop on and kind of let you know everything that's been going on, what'll be happening here in the future. Like I said, the show is going to continue. Just not quite 100% sure on the day it will be coming out or anything like that. So make sure you are, make sure you're following the show. Make sure that you're subscribed on, whether it's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, wherever you get your podcasts. Just make sure you've got us followed, and that way you get notified when the new show comes out, because we will be having one here in the next week. All right, we got Daytona coming up, and we got a big Daytona show and NASCAR season preview that we want to do, and we'll be doing it here soon. So stick around for that. But that'll do it. Thank you very much, as always, for joining me. I hope all of you have a great weekend, and until next time, take care.